Hello to all my Diversity Matters subscribers. My name is Oscar Holmes IV, and I really appreciate your support. And to show you how much I appreciate your support, as a Diversity Matters subscriber, you get exclusive access to listen to Beyond the Mill, my live diversity dialogues talk show that I created and host on campus at Rutgers University-Camden. Now, because it's a live show and recorded using a different system, the audio quality isn't as consistent at times, but I promise you, the guests and content are great and you'll love the show. Plus, if you're ever in the area, please join us to be a part of our live audience so that you can enjoy, listen, learn, network, and ask our guests questions in real time. Enjoy the show.
I want to bring up today's guest because we have a really good conversation that I want to talk about. So please help me welcome Ms. Laura Luciano. Laura is the Associate Director of the Office for Violence Prevention and Victim Assistance. Please come on up, Laura. Please give her a hand. Our next guest is Dr. Courtenay Cavanaugh, who is an Associate Professor of Psychology and Clinical Psychologist. And Courtenay is also the co-chair of the Committee of Institutional Equity and Diversity, along with Dr. Keith Green. So we have the co-chairs of the CID committee here, and they do important work. Please help me welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing? Doing well?
Yeah.
Okay, so I like to always start with the orienting question so that students and faculty and staff can get a good sense of who you are and how did you get here. So why don't you tell us what brought you to Rutgers? Let's start.
I came to Rutgers because it allowed me an opportunity to pursue my interests and my career goals. I was really interested in teaching and continuing to conduct research in this area. So that is what brought me here, and I've been here since 2010.
And you, Laura?
I had the pleasure to return home to Rutgers in 2001 on the New Brunswick campus, where I was an undergraduate student doing student activism work around sexual violence. And then I had the opportunity to become a staff person in 2001 with the Office for Violence Prevention and Victim Assistance there. And in 2017, October of 2017, I was able to come here to Rutgers-Camden, very exciting, to start the VPBA office here on this campus.
Excellent. So how can students, faculty, staff find you if they want to find you here on campus?
Students can easily take one of my courses. So since I'm a clinical psychologist, I teach regularly abnormal psychology. Given my expertise in violence against women, I also have a course in violence against women, which I teach fairly consistently and have since 2011. So that would be another way to find me. I also conduct research in this area. So students work in my lab and are involved and work with me in that way. And then I'm also involved in various service activities. So students sometimes send me out to work with them on initiatives. The easiest way to find me would be just to look at the psychology department webpage, faculty. My email is listed there. My office is in the third floor of Armitage Hall. So, and my office hours are listed on the faculty webpage. So that tells you when I'll be there.
You can find me and my colleague Julie Maliski, who's our program coordinator at VPBA, on the third floor of the campus center. I'm in room 306, so you can stop by and see me. The best way to keep up with our programs is to visit our webpage or follow the Rutgers Engage app, and we have a panel on the app. We also have Twitter and Facebook and Insta, so you can find us in a lot of different ways. If you are in need of emergency assistance due to victimization of sexual violence, domestic violence, stalking, you can call my office line, which is 856-225-2326, and you can call that number any time of day. A live person will answer that phone no matter what time it is, and they will say, do you need to speak to an advocate right away? And you will say yes, and then they will take your phone number and I'll call you back at whatever time it is.
Excellent. So imagine most people here probably know about the Me Too movement, just in case someone just came for the free lunch. Right. Could you explain what the Me Too movement is and why should regular people, regular students get involved with this movement?
So Me Too started really much earlier than any of us really know about. A woman named TiAira who was working with mostly young women of color around issues of violence. That was one of the areas that she was focused on, sexual violence. Started a program called Me Too to bring people in, particularly marginalized voices, into conversations around sexual violence. And in 2017, she used the hashtag #MeToo, where with some national dialogue around sexual violence was happening. And actually, Alyssa Milano, who is friends with TiAira, decided to retweet something that TiAira said, which was just Me Too. Like, I had this experience too, and the idea of Me Too is that many of us have had those experiences, and we shouldn't be ashamed of those experiences, and we should really raise our voices together. And so it was actually Alyssa Milano's retweet that got movement that happened right around the time that Harvey Weinstein was being accused of multiple instances of sexual violence and sexual harassment.
Are people familiar with Harvey Weinstein? Can you just kind of give a primer? People have never heard of that guy and don't know what.
Yeah, I said a lot of names, right? TiAira, civil rights activist, working with mostly young African American women in I think it's Alabama or Atlanta. I might be getting an A wrong. Sorry there. But then moved to New York and was doing work in New York City. Alyssa Milano, actress, feminist activist, probably most famously known for Who's the Boss and Charmed, which might be before a lot of your times. And then Harvey Weinstein is a pretty powerful movie producer, and there has been a long history of allegations of sexual harassment, sexual violence behavior, and a lot of actresses came out and said, basically, my career was destroyed because I rejected his advances. So probably most notably Mira Sorvino, who was an up-and-coming actress whose father is an actor, so she had some stake in the industry and basically just stopped getting parts.
So I'm glad that you mentioned TiAira Burke. She has a TED Talk, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, a phenomenal TED Talk, and she talked about the numbness she feels in times because there are so many high-profile people who are basically women are coming forward to say Me Too, but it seems like nothing is happening. There's no consequences. We have a current sitting president who has some really credible sexual assault allegations that was called on tape. We now have a Supreme Court justice who had a pretty credible, sexual assault allegation, and people are still, getting these powerful positions. Do you feel that numbness sometimes doing this type of work, or what can you share with us and other people so that we can recharge and just not stay in that moment or spot?
Well, for me, I've been working in this area for 20 years, and I think anybody doing this type of work has faced obstacles, whether it's attention to issues and then not receiving the response that one might expect to be effective in response to these problems. So I think certainly I respect her description of how she feels. I think there are a myriad of different responses that people feel in trying to address this topic that's very sensitive, and everybody's been affected by it in some way. So it's not just the ramifications of what's happening in the public discourse, it hits everyone on an emotional level to some degree, and there's just a lot of obstacles in trying to address the problem. So over the course of my own career, I can say certainly I have faced a lot of different emotions, not always, positive ones. It's a difficult task. People talk a lot about burnout or secondary trauma. Then there's this, I think reactions people, like you had mentioned, have. in it. Often my students, my collaborators, sometimes stories. There's a lot of different things I've turned to over the years to kind of keep me moving. Sometimes it's self-care, like, knowing when enough is enough and where I need to kind of step back and focusing on the positive. Because it's easy to always sometimes see the layers and the obstacles, but coming back and being like, wait, where are we making progress? Because, as negative as some of those situations have been, what's great is that they're part of the national dialogue. And this is a conversation that people are having in their families, in their communities, with their friends that I don't think has taken place before. So that makes me feel inspired to remember, like, how could this happen? Things are not working as I would like, but wow, this is great. This is a great time for all of us to try to make changes.
Yeah, I mean so a lot of things that Courtenay talked about is what keeps me motivated as well. And through my career, I've definitely seen a shift in survivors' willingness to come forward, to speak their truths, community members. So when I talk about community, I'm talking about our campus community, right? So other students, faculty, and staff who are supportive of survivors who come forward, and that is changed. That has changed over time. So what keeps me motivated, and I think what you all can maybe take to keep you motivated, is that I don't believe that I will see the end of sexual violence in my lifetime. I would love to be able to say that. I don't think that I'm going to see it. I would love to be unemployed one day where I don't have to meet with survivors, but what keeps me motivated is that we, as a community, care about each other, and if I can help one student one day, that's what keeps me motivated. So keep coming back when I see students engaging in programming and engaging in pro-social bystander behavior, which is this idea that we take care of each other, and that we interrupt attitudes and behaviors that lead to violence or cause violence. That keeps me super motivated. And so I get a lot of my resilience from the survivors that I work with and the students that I work with, that I have the pleasure to work with. So that keeps me really motivated.
Do we have an answer?
Alabama. Thank you. I know what's next. I knew what was next.
So, Courtenay, you have published many research articles on the topic, and you discuss, I think, about 9 different types of violence and experience. Can you explain some of your research findings and some of those specific types of violence that maybe not just women, but maybe others do as well?
Right. It's interesting because sometimes the public discourse or attention comes to a specific type of violence, but the reality is that people experience a myriad of different crimes that would fall in this category. My particular focus is on violence against women, so over the course of my career, I've focused largely on that. Different types of things that we would think of are child abuse, different types of intimate partner violence, and various other crimes. And the reason why I became interested in that is because we're interested in trying to meet the needs of people who have been affected. And there's a lot we have to learn about what we understand about people's experiences of being affected. Because most people, well, especially women, many will experience more than one type. So if it's psychological violence, physical violence during childhood or as an intimate partner or during college. So we have this complex pattern of experiences. I've tried to examine what that looks like and understand the different outcomes that would be related, and that would inform tailored interventions. So the article that you mentioned was one that I conducted on nurses. We looked at 9 different types of violence against them. They were all female nurses. Different types of childhood abuse, 3 different types of intimate partner, and another form of violence that nurses often experience is workplace violence, and that can be psychological. So what we looked at was, what are the common patterns in this group of people about these types? We found 4 different patterns. One was predominantly low, which is great. Another one was characterized mostly by childhood abuse. Another was characterized predominantly by different types of intimate partner violence. And the 4th group was characterized by workplace violence. We then examined whether those classifications were associated with both depression or PTSD. We found that the childhood abuse and the intimate partner groups, the groups that were characterized by those forms of violence, had higher rates of depression, but only the group that was characterized by intimate partner violence had higher rates of both depression and PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. That is useful in the sense of then, how might we develop mental health interventions to best serve that group of women being studied? And I think those types of studies are now being implemented more commonly across different groups. But I think, for me, that serves as a useful way of trying to figure out, how do we deliver what? I mean, the reality is we often are working with limited means and resources. So sometimes it's like really being strategic about who needs what, and these types of studies can try to inform that.
So Laura, can you walk us through the process of what happens if a student has experienced some sexual abuse or sexual assault? Then they call the number, they call that for you. What happens next?
So the way that I work with students is in really 2 different ways. And the first is through advocacy. So the first conversation is going to be focused on, how are you feeling? What are your options, and what options do you think are going to be best for you to move forward? So sometimes I'll talk to students who are interested in reporting to law enforcement, and I will help them navigate that. I'll talk to them about what that looks like. I'll talk to them about what they might experience while they're meeting with law enforcement, and then I provide accompaniment, which means I'll meet you at the police station and be with you while you're going through that process. Some people need some form of medical intervention, so I'll talk about their options there. Some people want to go through the school process to hold the person accountable. If the person who has abused them in some way is also a student, there's the option to go through the school process through Title IX, so I'll walk them through that process. So I use an empowerment approach, which means that I'm providing information so that each student can make an informed choice that works best for them, right? Y'all are experts in your own life. I am kind of an expert in my own life. I would never presume to tell you what is best for you. And so, that it's not about telling you what to do or giving you advice. It's making sure that you know what recourse you have and what is time limited and what you can take your time to think about. And then I also offer ongoing counseling. So if someone feels like they need to continue to talk about what's going on for them, and certainly that's something I would suggest somebody explore, right? To make sure that they are able to continue to function as a student, right? So we want our students to maintain their status as students and be in good standing, and so we know trauma interrupts that no matter when the trauma happens, right? And so I want to make sure that you're getting the support you need, that you have coping skills that you need, to be able to be a student here and graduate from here and go on to great things.
So just FYI, all of us here at Rutgers, we are available to you, but as faculty members, Courtenay and I, we are mandated to report instances of sexual assault or sexual abuse. So if you come to us in confidence, we are required to report that on to people like Laura. So if you do come straight to Laura, she can keep that information confidential. So you have options whether or not you do want to press charges or you just want to come to her office and just let her know. But as faculty members and staff, we are mandated to report that information to someone like Laura.
I'm glad you brought that up, Oscar, right? Because confidentiality is important to people, and this is another area, right? That's not to deter you from talking to your faculty and other staff members, but the only people on campus that are confidential is BPDA, the health services, both the counseling side and the medical side, and the law clinic through the are the only confidential resources on campus. So we're not saying don't talk to other people. We're saying know that when you go to other people for support, that's great because there's a lot of supportive people on campus, but they're mandated by federal law to report that to our Title IX coordinator.
So let's open it up to some of the questions that you may have. Laura, Courtenay, both.
Hi, my name's Rebecca. So I was wondering how I can make positive change in my environments where I see. Sorry. Oh. Hi.
Yeah, it's better.
So I was wondering how I can approach making positive change in my own environment where I often see either ambivalence or acceptance to sexual harassment. For example, I worked at a job where a lot of women were in my department, and I would see instances of physical and verbal sexual harassment, and the women would laugh and say, "Oh, that's just Dave. He's just being silly." And I don't want to, tell these women, "No, you're being a victim." However, I do see it as a problem that Dave feels if this behavior is okay, or even an environment, even when I have people, make the argument that, "Oh, I see it. Why are you so bothered? Why should women be bothered? I see it as a compliment." I find it hard to make my argument about how damaging it is when I'm met with that in response by women.
That's a great question. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, so I think Courtenay and I both believe in the concept of bystander intervention, and this is actually the primary prevention strategy that we use on our campus, which is how do we interrupt situations that attitudes and behaviors that are either directly violent or can lead to attitudes about violence. And so this is what you're mentioning, right? This what we would call high risk situation where people are being physically, sexually harassed, and also what we would call low risk situations where people are saying things, so it's not directly violence, but they're creating an atmosphere where violence is okay. And so one of the things that we would encourage, or I would encourage, is thinking about how you can interrupt those situations in ways that feel comfortable for you, that you might not see. I think the challenge with that is you might not see the positive result or positive change right away. So, I have a family member who used to make derogatory comments in front of me all the time, and every time that person would say something, I would say, "Don't say that in front of me. I think you meant this," right? And I would just correct it and then keep talking. And eventually it got to the point where that person, if they say something in front of me, they go, "Oh, sorry," right? And so they're starting to recognize that I have a problem with it, even though they don't have a problem with it. And so I am hopeful that eventually that person is just going to stop saying that derogatory term, right? But you have to feel confident in however you're going to intervene. So if it's the direct, afterwards saying, "Well, you laughed about that," and you brushed it off saying, "Oh, that's just how this person acts," but are you really okay? I saw that and it made me uncomfortable, so I just wanted to check in with you, right? And so it doesn't always have to be directly like, "You shouldn't do that," right? We don't have to necessarily, if you're comfortable with that, great, but not everybody's comfortable with that direct call out, right? So there are other ways to do it that would maybe elicit less resistance.
I think just to also comment on that question, it's difficult, right? All of a sudden, these sticky situations, each situation looks a little bit different based on the circumstances, who is doing this, what the repercussions of acting are. And so I also support, what Laura was saying about bystander intervention. I think that is a great approach. And then I think that as much as issue in other contexts and surround yourself with support can also be helpful, because I find that all of us are always evolving and thinking about where we at to change this. And it changes over time. And it's not something we can, it's just, we see and then we're like, okay, that's how I can address this now. So just having opportunities to have an ongoing dialogue. I think related courses that are offered on campus are a great place to build from that, because you'll get the content, there'll be time for, supportive discussion around that. And the bystander, there are multiple, these are also strategies that are offered on campus that students can participate. They've been delivered since last fall, and those are great ways for students to just think more about what do these situations look like, what am I seeing, and what might be the best strategies for me to just kind of, think that through even more personally.
So you can either approach the people, the women at work, or even Dave himself, and say, you probably didn't mean to, engage in sexual harassment or sexual assault, whatever it was. So you can actually name what was going on. You probably didn't mean anything by it, but this is what I saw. And you probably don't want to get in trouble because you have policies at work, things like that. And so you come to it in trying to help Dave to realize that he may not have meant it, but this is going on, it's not okay. Then, he may be more inclined to change behavior as opposed to be attacking him and calling him basically a sexual assault or something like that.
And just to kind of talk a little bit more about bystander intervention, we know that the more people that witness something, the less likely there is to be an intervention, but that there's often a lot of people who feel the same way that you do, and they're unable or unwilling to speak up in that moment. So, there's lots of barriers that we could talk about, but there's a lot of barriers for people to speak up. So when you're taking that step and really taking responsibility to say, I need to say something in this moment, there are other people that may be feeling that too. And hopefully, what we've seen work in the past is once one person speaks up, other people will then support that first person, right? Like, oh yeah, I saw that too, or that upset me also, right? So hopefully you'll get that support also.
Or you can do like a silent campaign and just talk to other women and say, does it bother you? And when you get a certain number, like a coalition, call it together, you may feel more comfortable if all four of you have been bothered by the same thing to speak up.
I have a question, just to piggyback on that. If you allow people to continue to say things, even though you classify it as minor because it's not a safety issue, but if you allow people to continue to say things, is it opening the door? Are they testing you to see if they can even go further than just saying things? I just want to get your feedback, because I feel as though if you accept it, they will even go further than just saying things. And so would you just comment on that? Because I'm sure that's behavior. And it could be a tactic that people are using to see if they can go further by just saying, making comments.
Yeah, there's actually research by Dr. David Lisak, who focused on campus sexual violence, and he found that the perpetrators of this violence were, in addition to being repeat offenders, prior to committing the acts of sexual violence, they were using derogatory language or misogynistic language or racist language, right? And so I absolutely agree with you that, why we talk about high risk and low risk situations is that those low risk situations that a lot of people think are minimal or it's just words. That's what I hear from a lot of people. Well, it's just a word, or it doesn't hold weight, or if we give it weight, then it's more powerful, right? And my belief of that is if we allow people to degrade us with words, they will also be more willing to degrade us in other ways. And so I absolutely agree with you. So, one of the barriers that I have overcome in my time, but certainly not everybody is there, is calling out language anytime I hear it. And I've been accused of being a killjoy, like you ruin the party, you ruin the fun, you're the word police. I've heard all of that, and I just say, well, I guess I'm the word police then. Like, oh well, like I just make a joke, I just joke about it because it's important to me to continuously call out language. And listen, we all have our lines in the sand, and I think that's the beauty of bystander intervention as a strategy, that the only thing, we really only have to agree on the lowest common denominator, which for me is, we believe that sexual violence and domestic violence is wrong and it shouldn't happen in our community. Some of us are in different spaces around language and what language is offensive and what's not offensive. And, there are definitely terminology that some groups may be able to say to each other that other groups cannot say, right? And so I know there's a lot of nuance there. But we need to, I hold very firm to the things that I find, the words that I find offensive, and I will call a person out every single time. But I'm a more direct person, so.
And what I like about the bystander movement and effort is that it offers everybody to find some strategy that works for them. And it's not saying, although we might have preference about what a more direct strategy could be more useful, it's kind of, I find it inclusive in saying, hey, we all need to do something. Where's your starting point? And then how do you go from there? And I find that that's been really useful for students. So students in my violence course, both last fall and in the current semester, as part of their course curriculum, they receive a program that educates them about one bystander program, and then they facilitate delivery to others on campus. I found that helps them to kind of think through, where am I at? Like, you're saying, what are the situations around me? They get to practice the skills. And we really try to make it non-judgmental in terms that there's no one approach that has to be. As long as you're trying and acting, that's the start. And I think that's really helpful, and I really appreciate that about the bystander program is it offers opportunity for all of us to find our way.
And it's not, and to go back to your kind of original point or question, that it's really hard to figure out what to do in that moment. And so part of what we would do, what BPA does in our programming, is really take those real life situations. Like, we would ask you to write that out on an index card and anonymously write that out, and then let's role play that a little bit. Let's work that out. What could you say? Does that feel right? Does that sound right to you? Who else has another idea that might work? Because it's hard. So we have to figure it out together. And every situation is nuanced, so we want to practice it, right? We know from the research that practicing helps us follow through, right? So maybe I didn't say anything this time because I wasn't sure what to say or how to do this, but now I've talked with Courtenay and Oscar about it. Now I have 3 different ideas, and so if it happens again, or if it happens to them, we have some tools in our back pocket.
I wondered if someone could speak on the local context of sexual violence on our campus. I've never looked, so I'm not sure if the numbers are kind of really available. What kind of numbers, what kind of types of sexual violence occur on campus? How regularly, how do we kind of know about that? It's obviously unreported, I'm sure, but could you might kind of talk to about that kind of.
So the stat I have is like 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys, but a more localized, maybe Rutgers stat.
Yeah. So absolutely. So yes, there are some national statistics, and what we found from our campus climate survey, which was conducted in 2015, was, and this was a survey that was looking specifically at sexual violence on our campus, and we had a really good turnout rate of people participating, so we feel really good about these numbers. Was that about 1 in 5 of our undergraduate women were experiencing sexual violence while they were a student, and that about 5% of our undergraduate men were experiencing sexual violence while they were a student. The definition of sexual violence was very broad, so it included any form of unwanted sexual contact. So it was a broad definition of sexual violence, but that is very consistent with the 2 other Rutgers campuses, as well as national data. Campus climate surveys nationally are about between 19 and 35%, so we're kind of right there at that 20%. The other thing that I think is important for students to know about our statistics from that campus climate survey is that our LGBTQIA students and our who are living in campus residence are more at risk to experience acts of sexual violence, and that 49%, this is the statistic that when I was looking to be hired here and I was looking at the campus climate survey, I was like, whoa, 49% of our students have come in already experienced some form of trauma. So that included sexual violence, domestic violence or family violence they either experienced or witnessed as a child, other child abuse, our combat war veterans that were experiencing trauma while they were serving our country. So forms of trauma, 49%. So we know that we have students that are here that have had experiences, and I think going back to that national dialogue, and one of the challenges with a movement like Me Too, where we're constantly bombarded, and with the national dialogue around Brett Kavanaugh and around our president and around other celebrities, right, or famous people, is that it's great because we're talking about it, but it's also really challenging for people who have had experiences. They feel very triggered by the constant in-your-face, like I turn on the news and it's there, and I turn on the TV, it's there, and then I see signs on campus about programming, and it's overwhelming. And so, the importance of people knowing that our students have had experience before they come here is knowing that they might need services while they're here because of that past experience. So those are our statistics. You're right, Keith, that it is very underreported. So if you look at our campus security numbers, which the Rutgers Police put out and Public Safety puts out annually, that's going to look like a very small percentage for us, right? That's because that is only what is being reported to law enforcement and to other places, and it's also only what's happening on our campus. And so we're a 60% commuter population, right? And so we know that our students are experiencing, and you all are having experiences when you're not on campus that involve other students or involve people who aren't students, and we might not get that data.
Any ideas of how do we get men more invested and involved in this conversation? I feel like often, even now, you don't get a lot of men who come or even who are invested in the situation. I feel like when I talk to my female friends about it, it's all like, oh, I get it, I've experienced it. But when I talk to my male friends, it's like, I think we're exaggerating. Yeah, so how do we try to change that culture?
I think we have a lot of opportunity to make the movement more inclusive, because any type of time that we're saying this happens, this is bad, I think then people start to exclude themselves, and I hear that sometimes. So I think there's opportunities to just continue to make all efforts need to be thoughtful of bringing more parties to that conversation and incentivizing them. And to realize those that are present, because they are happening. I think part of it too is bringing attention to that men are affected by this problem, because the more that they don't believe that they are, one, many men are directly affected, and every man knows a woman who everybody is affected. So sometimes bringing awareness to what that looks like and why it's a problem and how it rolls out, I think sometimes can increase motivation to be more invested. And I do believe that there's movement happening here. It's maybe not where we all want to be in terms of parties present, but I do see changes here that inspire me to feel like, okay, there's things to be. We're making some progress here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my approach in terms of educating the community is around this being a community issue that we all have to be involved in, and approaching programming around how to be a good friend, and how to be a good bystander, and not, back in the day, 20 years ago, there was programming that was happening that was like, first of all, very gender exclusive, that was really creating a dynamic of assuming that the vast majority of men were going to perpetrate, right? We know that is not true, right? The vast majority of men are not going to perpetrate. It's actually a very small percent. And there's a percentage of women who perpetrate, and there's a non-binary people who perpetrate. So, we have to approach it as an inclusive issue. And to me, the best way to do that is to talk about it as a community issue. When one person in our community is affected, we're all affected. The other thing we know from our campus climate survey is that 66% of you will talk to your peers, will talk to your friends about what's going on. So you're not necessarily coming to my office to talk to me or going to police or whoever. You're talking to each other. And so we want to make sure, or I want to make sure that you all know how to be good friends to each other and know what to do if somebody comes to you and explains that. And, I work with just as many people who have gone to, their friends of different genders than they are to talk about their experiences and for support as they did their same, right? So I think that's I want male students to know there is space for them, male identified students to know there is space for them in this movement, there is space for them in this conversation, and I need them to be part of this movement. It's imperative.
Yeah, thank you for all of the observations and thoughts so far. I was struck by, Laura, your comment that you don't think you'll see the end of sexual violence in your lifetime, and it caused me to kind of sit back a little bit and think about why might she say that. One thought that I had was some of the news that just came out about the rape kits being destroyed before they could be tested by so many police departments across the country. I'm wondering what other either societal level or systemic factors lead you to say that, because I think while all of this kind of interpersonal dynamic, bystander-oriented things we're talking about are important, we have to obviously recognize there's societal level and system level forces at play. So I'm just curious what both of you would say about that.
I didn't mean to sound like a downer there or pessimistic, because I really am an optimistic person. But my belief about violence is that it's a learned behavior, and so I think that campus administrators get a lot of negative attention or energy to kind of solve this problem. And while I believe that we are constantly learning and there's constant room for change and growth, I think it's got to start well before I'm engaging with students, right? And so y'all are coming here when you're 17, 18, or older. Yeah, you already have your belief systems. You already have a lot of what you learned in the home. And so, I think until we are doing education and modeling around bodily autonomy from the time a baby is born, we're talking about issues of consent, and we're talking about the full range of gender roles and not socializing in a way that's very gendered and limiting particularly male identified people from living their full lives and their full range of emotion and self. And until we're talking about healthy sexuality from go, it's not going to change. And it's upsetting to me that I am one. I have three daughters. You hear me talk about my daughters a lot. It's very upsetting to me to know that in my group of peers with children the same age, that I am one of the very few parents who have talked to my children about their own having ownership over their own bodies, and then enforcing that by saying, no, you don't have to hug Uncle so-and-so if you don't want to. No, you don't have to kiss out every relative just because they're your relative. So really living that, and I don't think that we're going to fully see a change until that. Part of the challenge of having people who are in positions of authority who have accusation after accusation, and this is not a political statement. This is, we have a Supreme Court justice that may have sexually assaulted someone and then behaved the way that they did when they were being questioned about it. Is that a person we want to be making important decisions for our country? And what we saw was an increase in behavior. We saw an increase in people feeling entitled to do whatever they want. And so no, it's not going to change until all of that changes. And
I wanted to just
sad,
say,
but that's the reality.
I just wanted to say real quick, I think it's going to take multimodal and combined efforts, right? Because it's happening, it needs education, it needs research, it needs policy initiatives around us. But here's where I get inspired. How many people are here
And where are you all moving in your lives? Are some of you going into law enforcement? What will you all end up being? And if this conversation starts now, maybe you might be that supervisor who's like, wait, I would like to implement this new policy at work that addresses this policy. I want to acknowledge that some of the people in our workplace or the people we serve are affected by this. That is what brings me to think that maybe it starts here and that all of us are going to end up in different professional situations where we can take that further. But I do think it needs multiple efforts, which means that when we're trying to move towards these initiatives, we can't just do it as educators. We can't just do it as service providers. We need law enforcement. We need everybody in all community aspects to be engaged.
And I know I know that you all as students feel disenfranchised on campus, but you all have the most power on campus collectively. Your voices are the ones that can make the change, right? You can do it. And listen, anybody that wants to galvanize, I am with you 100%.
And sorry, one more thing. I see a lot of students from my courses, both last year and this year, that have been part of that movement, others that work with Laura. And I just know from directly what I've seen in my course during those two times, those students' spirit not only received a program, they then delivered it, and they reached out to 200 other students on campus. That shows the work that you all are already doing. And I've seen it in the classroom where students are like, hey, we're talking about this. These are the situations I see, and I'm already acting differently. So the movement is changing on our campus. We're watching it. We're watching you be more engaged. We're watching you change the conversation with the people around you, both on campus and your loved ones. So I think we need to keep, being inspired by the fact that, hey, thank you for having us and even bringing this as a conversation on campus.
So, Brad, I'm going to hold on yours. So I want to leave you with a final thought. Sometimes our light goes out, but it's blown again. It's reclaimed by an encounter with another human being. Each of us knows that we just thank you for having this inner light. So I hope all of you have rekindled the inner light from this conversation and move on. Please, this is our mid-season finale. We will be back in February 13th, which is Black History Month. So we will talk about the African diaspora experience with Dr. Elijah Majalou and Ms. Marla Parker, the School of Social Work. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of this conversation. I think you get the swag bag. So go see TiAira. You get the swag bag. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Mill and for being a Diversity Matters subscriber. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more, please post, talk about, and reshare our show with all of your friends and family. And leave us a favorable review so that it will make it easier for others to find us wherever they listen to podcasts. We cannot do this important work or keep it going without you, so we really appreciate your support. Beyond the Mill is produced by me, Oscar Holmes IV, and TiAira Neal, and receives generous support from Rutgers University-Camden's Office of Diversity Inclusion and Office of Student Affairs. Diversity Matters is produced by WH Consulting, a firm that provides a wide range of management consulting and professional services to individuals and organizations. Original music produced by Sincere Morton Murray. Until next time, peace and love.